So we're now going to look at manipulating a current date that we have set within Carbon. And this is extremely helpful if you're working with adding a certain amount of days on or weeks to a current time to maybe compare them at a later date, or just check out what the date or month is or something like that when you've added a certain amount of days on. This just gives you massive flexibility, and it's so easy just to work with dates in this way once you have these methods in place. So let's go ahead and create a Carbon instance using the current date and time. And let's go ahead and once again just do a var dump on this and head over to our browser and take a look at what we see. So this is just the current date and time. Now we're going to look at a few of the methods that we have available. We won't look at them all because some of them are self-explanatory and you can find them in the Carbon documentation. But let's look at something like adding a couple of days onto this date. Now, traditionally, this would be really difficult because you would have to have the current date. You'd have to manipulate it in such a way to add days on. But what happens if, for example, you're at the very end of the month and you want to add a couple of days on? You're then going to have to calculate how many days are in a specific month, and you're going to have to then modify the month as well. This can get really, really messy. So what happens if on the current date that we have, so we're currently on the 14th of July 2015, let's say we want to add a couple of days to this date. Well, that's easy. We just use the add days method, and then in here we provide the amount of days that we want to add on. So in here, we go ahead and refresh, and we're now on the 16th. Easy as that. Now, as I mentioned, if we have a date like, say, the 30th of a certain month, and we want to add a couple of days onto that, that's obviously going to take us over into the next month. So let's look at adding, say, 20 days to this date, which is obviously going to take us into the next month. So let's add 20 days to the current date, and let's see what happens. And there we go. So we now land on the 4th of the next month, which is extremely helpful. So with just one method, we've gone ahead and manipulated the date, and everything's gone ahead and updated itself. So we now have this brand new date and time. So there are a couple of other additions to this or changes to this. We can go ahead and say add sub days. So we can take away 20 days if we wanted to, which takes us into the previous month, so near the end of the previous month. And this works the same with weeks, months, years, hours, minutes, and seconds. So all you need to do is substitute these in. So if we want to add 20 weeks to the current date, we would see the following. So we're now into, sub weeks. We're back into 2014. If we go ahead and add weeks on, there we are. So we're on the 9th month and the 1st day. So this is extremely easy to just manipulate dates in this way. And obviously, like I said, we have things like hours, minutes, and seconds. So we could add, say, 60 minutes. That would obviously be an hour. So we could just do add hour. But let's do 30 instead. So when we refresh, you see that we come up to a different time because we've just added 30 minutes onto that. And obviously what we're doing here is we're calling two of these methods. We can call any amount of these methods because all it's going to do is just keep manipulating it. So you have total flexibility over taking one date and time and then just manipulating it by adding weeks, minutes, so you can combine these and chop them up to get the result you need. So more interesting is a method called add weekdays and sub weekdays. So let's take a look at this. So add weekdays 2. So let's just comment this out for now and just remind ourselves what the current date is. So we're on 2015 and we're on the 14th day. So if I want to add 2 weekdays, which is obviously Monday to Friday, when I refresh, we get 16. So that's pretty obvious. But what happens if we want to add 7 weekdays? We're currently on 14, remember? So when we add 7 weekdays, we end up at 23. Now that's 2 more than we should have because we've skipped the weekend. So we can just work with weekdays if we want to. That's a really helpful method in the cases that you would actually need that. Otherwise, you would have to just stick with add days, and that wouldn't really help you out. Adding 7 days to the current date's 21, but when we add only weekdays, we obviously skip the weekend and we end up with 23. So again, in terms of manipulating, we can see how useful Carbon is in manipulating the current date, or a date that we've created, or a date and time we've created, in a certain way using these helpful methods. And again, if you just head over to the source code and just go ahead and search for add days or something like that, you can see that we have all of these other methods as well. You can go ahead and just look at them and see how they work. Obviously, we have something like add day as well, so it just gives a default value of 1. If you don't want to use something like add days 1, you can just skip out passing an option and just do add day, which makes your syntax a little bit cleaner and your code a little bit cleaner. So that's how we manipulate dates in Carbon. I'm sure you'll agree, extremely useful in a wide variety of cases, particularly when we're working with something as complicated as dates and times.